Welcome to Face Forward, the podcast, the series that takes you behind the scenes of the riveting world of clinical trial management. I am your host, Valerie Coveney, and I am thrilled to be your guide on this journey through the nuances of planning, executing, and navigating the clinical research landscape. Joining us today is a true trailblazer with more than 20 years of experience in the industry. We will be exploring the importance of estimands in planning of clinical trials and analyzing data, focusing on three key aspects: purposes and requirements, cross-functional responsibility, impact on statistical analysis. So whether you're a long-time listener or joining us for the first time, get ready to get inspired and informed. Let's extend our warmest welcome to Innovaderm's Associate Director in Biostatistics, Edith Siméon. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Before we get started here, can you just explain to our audience, what are estimands?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question. It's a new word. It seems strange, but estimands, it's nothing new. We already did all that previously. It's just that before, everybody was using their own language. So when discussing things with the regulatory authority, it might bring confusion, not using the same terms, but thinking different things in your mind. So Estimands really bring a framework, common terminology that is now used across clinical trial, across regulatory agency, making sure that everybody are on the same page, understand the same thing when defining what is the main objective of the clinical trials and how it will be analyzed. There are 5 components for an estimate to be fully described. As I said, it's nothing new. There's only one, I'm going to get to it, that we used to do later in the study. Now it is required that we do it up front. So let's start. The first one, treatment condition. Treatment condition, it's basically which treatment group a subject might receive during a clinical trial. The active arm, the placebo or vehicle. The population that will be used for the main analysis of the primary endpoint. So, for example, intent to treat, which is defined as all randomized subject. The third point is to clearly define the endpoint that will be analyzed, the primary efficacy endpoint, the change from baseline, proportion of responders, etc. The fourth one, this is the one that I was referring to a little bit earlier. It's named the intercurrent event. So basically, intercurrent event is anything that could happen during the course of the trial in real life that might have an impact on data, either preventing to collect the data, for example, is a subject discontinued early from the trial, or when it happened, that you are not that sure you can rely on the data that was collected while this event was going on. A good example, prohibited medication. So if a subject received the treatment from the clinical trial and at the same time a prohibited medication that is known to have an impact on efficacy, well, data collected during that time, not sure if it's the effect of the treatment or the effect of the prohibited medication. So how do we handle these such data in the analysis? So before, as I said, we were thinking about this, but after the protocol was finalized during the course of the study, when we were developing the statistical analysis plan, now it's required to think about these events and plan how we are going to handle them in the statistical analysis when planning the study. The last component is what they call the population level summary. It's basically which statistic you're going to use to compare the treatment arm. Mean and standard deviation, proportion of subject, count and number of subject. So as I said, it's basically, we already did all these before. It's just now we have common terminology to talk, to understand each other.
Exactly. Amazing. So you mentioned earlier that estimands are required to be defined in protocols. So would that apply to all phases?
That's a great question again. To be honest, the new guidance, the E9R1, does not clearly state it's needed for phase 1, 2, 3, or blah, blah, blah. But when you read it, it's mentioned that estimates are needed for any confirmatory trials. So meaning any trial based on which you will conclude the efficacy of the drugs that you will mention the result, let's say in an investigator brochure, that will support an NDA. So basically, for now, it's mainly required for phase 2B and phase 3.
Okay, so based on your answer, do we need to specify an estimate for all defined endpoints?
It is clear that we need to define an estimate for the primary efficacy endpoint. It will be called the main estimate. It will be used to determine the aspect of the trial design, the conduct, and analysis of the study.
Okay.
Now, for the other endpoint, like secondary or exploratory, the consensus right now in the practice is to define an estimate for any secondary endpoint for which you want to conclude something. You want to be able to claim something in the investigator brochure. You want to submit to a regulatory agency. Others, like exploratory, that really just exploratory,
Okay.
we don't need estimates right now.
Okay, so moving on here to cross-functional responsibility. In your opinion, should they only be defined by the biostatisticians?
In my opinion, no. As I said, there are 5 components that needs to be defined for an estimate to be fully specified. The primary endpoint, it's not a biostatistician who have that knowledge, that expertise. It's come from tons of previous published papers, medical input, etc. Population level summary, population that will be used for the statistical analysis, probably, but we need to make sure that the sponsor agree with them. The treatment condition, for sure, no. I mean, it's defined by the protocol design. And where the biostatistician needs a lot of help with, it's for the intercurrent event. Because intercurrent event, it's to know which event will have an impact on the data. It requires a lot of medical knowledge, medical expertise. Biostatisticians, we don't have that expertise. It's not our formation. So we really need for that point the input from, example, medical monitors. They are the one knowing, well, this type of medication should not be taken because it's a prohibited medication. I don't know that as a biostatistician. I could if I work a lot in that area, in that indication over time. But it's always best to have a medical opinion in that area.
Okay, so what other aspects of clinical trials could benefit from an early discussion about estimates?
Very great question. One that comes to my mind very quickly. It's a risk-based monitoring.
Okay.
And now it's required that we do risk-based monitoring, that we no longer do 100% SDV. We need to target which data will be 100% NDV, which one will be followed in another manner, like central monitoring, etc. So having discussed the estimate upfront during the design of the protocols, make the team fully aware again of the intercurrent events. So when you know which type of event will have a huge impact on the reliability of your data, you can more thoroughly plan the risk-based monitoring to prevent these events to happen.
Yes.
So you proactively monitor these events, address the situation with the site, instead of being reactive at the end of the study.
Exactly. So we're now at the last point of the episode, so the impact of statistical analyses. So if we can go directly into it, what would be the main impacts?
In my opinion, the biggest change is bring to statistical analysis. It's because of, again, the introduction of the estimates that we need now to take upfront. With this now clearly being defined, it's allowed the biostatistician to better choose the method that will be used to impute the missing data and to handle the data that are not that reliable. I'm thinking 20 years ago. It was LOCF, last observation carry forward, that's it. Now we need to think about in the real life, what happened in the real life to these subjects? What will be the real course if we would have observed these data? What will they have been? So now we try to choose a method of imputation that will mimic real life. So basically, in the end, the results are more reliable to the general population because of that.
Exactly. So this concludes our last talking point for our episode. Thank you so much for being here, Edith.
Well, thank you so much for having me today.
As we conclude another illuminating episode of Face Forward, we find ourselves at the crossroads of science and progress. Remember that behind the jargon and statistics lie stories of unwavering commitment, meticulous observation, and the pursuit of evidence that shapes our understanding of health and disease. Stay at the forefront of knowledge and innovation and follow Face Forward on your preferred platform. My name is Valerie Kovney. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.